Bevelport and Dixie area, outside of Jasper.
Right.
Take me back in time to.
All right, we shall do that. Let's take this trip. Let's start with my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather is named Billy McCray. Now, Billy McCray was born in St. Augustine, Texas. And he left St. Augustine, or the family left St. Augustine when he was 3 years old, and they moved right outside of Hemphill in a little city called Milam, little town called Milam. Mm-hmm. And then a guy that had a plantation in Jasper, Texas, right where the old post office is located, traveling north on Main Street that goes all the way probably up to the cemetery and probably beyond during that particular time, named Colonel McCray. Bought my grandfather because he was a slave owner. Mm-hmm. And so everything that my great-grandfather did during that particular time for Colonel McCray, from the time he bought him, was mostly agricultural work, as most blacks during that particular time up from slavery or during slavery time, that's what they did, was agricultural work and stuff like that. And as time progressed, and my great-grandfather got older, somehow or another he took up the occupation of cooking. And he became a very prolific cook. As a matter of fact, he cooked for a restaurant in Jasper at that particular time called Captain Kelly's. And after he stopped cooking for Captain Kelly's, well, he also cooked for the military, because the military was still a prominent force roaming the areas around Southeast Texas. After he finished,
what years are we talking about here?
Well, he was born in 1854, and so it had to be 18 in the 1880s.
Wow.
I'm saying 1870s to 1870 something to 1880s, because my grandfather, his son, was born in 1880. So I'm being hypothetical here because I don't know the exact age, but I knew that he was 26 years old when he fathered my grandfather, and that's another story, and I'm getting to that now. But at any rate, my great grandfather Billy worked aboard the ships, the ships that come up from on the Nature's River to the Angelina River, because Bevelport was a thriving community at that particular time. As a matter of fact, the founding fathers had at one time decided that the county seat of Jasper would be in Bevelport, and that is written in the historical archive.
Is that because it was such a hub
because
of the river?
Hub. All of these ships came in there. They unloaded all the merchandise.
Yeah.
They came to the stores. The whatever was needed come to Jasper by boat through the Nature's River to the Angelina River, and the stop disembarkment was at the Angelina River there in Bevelport. So they had schools and everything there. Wow. Down in Bevelport. So it was a thriving community and everything. So, but cooler heads prevailed, and they moved the county seat to where the county courthouse is located now. Now, that within itself is another story. My great-grandfather, Billy McCray, owned that land where the county courthouse sits. As a matter of fact, he owned the land from the courthouse square going south all the way to Sandy Creek. Going east, he owned all of that going to where Visitor Road starts and Manion Street. Billy McCray, according to the deeds that I have on it. Mm-hmm. And so once my great-grandfather, now I need to back up a little bit, because before he died, he fathered six children. Mm-hmm. And his oldest child was named Albert McCray. Albert McCray's mother, who my great-grandfather Billy McCray befriended and had a child by, they never were married, and he never did marry my great-grandmother Mandy. Her name was Mandy Armstrong.
Okay.
And that was out in the Peachtree community.
Yes, sir.
So all of the Armstrongs in the Peachtree community at one particular time, they were akin to the McCrays. They were akin to us because my grandfather was a McCray and his mama was an Armstrong. So this is the way the story goes, and it permeates or comes on down to Albert McCray and his legacy. Now, Albert McCray as a young man was, he sharecropped in Peachtree. I don't know the name of the plantation owner that he worked for and or that he sharecropped with, and they lived on that property. He and his mama and his siblings. But he met a young lady by the name of Frances Johnson. Now, Frances Johnson was the daughter of Henry Johnson and Mary Johnson. Now, they lived across the river in Beaverport. There was a ferry that transported them, or the families that lived across the river, to and fro every day, whatever they had to do. But my great-grandfather, Henry Johnson, my grandmother, Frances McCrae's father, was an educated black man. He knew how to read and write, and so he wanted his children to know how to read and write. So they had a school right there in Beaverport on the other side of the river. He lived on the west side of the river, but on the east side, where Beaverport, the thriving community was a school. So he had two kids, Francis Johnson and Eli Johnson. My great-grandfather, Henry Johnson, made sure that they got an education, so my grandmother could read and write as well as anybody, and she was born in 1884. I don't know exactly when Uncle Eli was born, but he's a little bit older than my grandmother, so I had to be somewhere around about 1882, somewhere along in there. So, but anyway, there are still descendants of Uncle Eli's children, and quite naturally, my grandmother. Well, I'm sitting here as a representative of her. But anyway, long story short, Albert McCrae met Frances McCrae, and they married sometimes in the 1890s, early 1890s. And Henry Johnson, my great grandfather, went down on Fort Lamarck Road, 1747. He bought 28 acres of land there. And so my grandfather was kind of like inspired by his father-in-law, Henry Johnson. So when he married his daughter, he saw fit to buy 68 acres of land adjoining the 28 acres that Henry Johnson had bought. So in so doing, that made the McCrae estate be 96 acres, because everything that Henry Johnson owned there went to his daughter, Frances McCrae, and they put that together, and that 96 acres is still there. So that brings us now to the Albert McCrae and Frances McCrae era. Albert and Frances McCrae settled there on Fort Lamarck Road, 1747, and Albert McCrae was, by working all of his life in Peachtree, Texas for sharecropping, he was what I would describe as an agricultural expert. He cleared the land by himself, and along the way, he fathered 9 children, 5 girls and 4 boys. A lot of people are familiar with my uncle, my mama's brothers and sisters. My mother is the youngest of 5 girls, and start with Almedia McCrae. We call her Aunt D. And then we had Ardella McCrae Trailer, and then you had Beulah McCrae, and then you had my mother, Lorene McCrae. And then you had Parthena McCrae, or Parthena Adams was the oldest. She married Red Adams. Starting with her, she should be the first. Parthena, and then Almedia, all the way down to my mother, which was the baby girl. And then you had Pamela McCrae, which was the oldest boy. And then you had Teddy McCrae, and then you had Leicester McCrae and Albert McCrae Jr. These were the 9 children of Albert and Frances McCrae. And back in those days, I can understand now why there were large families. And the reason why blacks, especially during that era, had large families was because it helped with the income and the economics of the house. The more children you had, well, they could work the crops and the sharecropping and bring in more revenue that way. Yeah. So I was the second born of my mother's children. I have a brother that's older than he's 8 years old now. His name was Bobby Joe Hadnot. Bobby Joe was kind of like my little owl when I was growing up. He was 8 years older than I was, but we were reared to maturity, both of us, by Albert and Frances McCrae. And not only that, but the oldest grandchild, which was Parthena's oldest grandchild, his oldest daughter was named Robert Renfro. So they reared 9 children of their own to maturity, and 3 grandchildren, Robert, Bobby Joe, and myself. My brother Bobby expired last August the 24th of 2018. I miss him dearly to this day, and it was just he and I had grown so close together in the last 5 to 10 years of his life. It was just almost like we were almost inseparable. But at any rate, The old man worked that farm. When we became of age, or when I came along, he didn't do what was called public work. He mostly worked the farm. Now that 6 to 8 acres of land cost $700 at that particular time in anywhere between 1898 and 1902. I still have the deed to that. That's the reason why I can say off the top of my head how much it cost. But that was more like 70, 80, 90, $100 something thousand back in those days when people were making 50 cents a day and a quarter a day, a quarter and a 5-gallon bucket of Lord. We called that Crisco today when you use the term Lord. It was nothing more than hog grease, but it went a long way. But he taught all of his children, all the way down to Robert, Bobby Joe, and myself. There was one thing that he stressed, and I stressed that same thing to my children, and I'll get to that in a moment. And he said, "We want you to live within your means," and he said, "and try to establish yourself some independence."
Wow, those are great words of wisdom.
And I didn't quite understand what he was talking about as a young kid. My grandfather being up from slavery and me born, at the time I was born, I didn't understand those words. But when I look back at it in retrospect, all he was trying to show me and try to tell me to do was live to where I could be comfortable, not try to compete with anybody.
That's
treat
right.
folk the way you want to be treated. And and one thing he told me the night that I was leaving Jasper to go to Houston to marry my wife, I went and woke him up and I asked him, I said, "Do you have any advice for me?" He sit up on the side of his bed and he said, "Treat her right." And he said, "Let your word be your bond." My grandfather was not an educated man, but I would liken him to be, and I put his education in this vernacular, and this is my own vernacular. I could say that he got his high school diploma in kindergarten. He got his BS degree in the first grade. He got his master's degree in the second. He got a PhD in the third. And the reason why I say that is because on that 6 to 8 acres of land, the old log cabin buildings that he erected himself made him be an architectural engineer as far as I was concerned.
Right.
Because he took lumber or logs that he cut on his own place, and it was 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 buildings that he built. A crib to hold his grain, which was his corn, his peas, his peanuts, and also a shed for his wagon, because you had to have a wagon in those days for the mules to pull or horses to pull to harvest your crop, especially your corn and all that kind of stuff. And so he did that with his hands. And not only that, but he built a smokehouse made out of logs. The old crib is still standing there. It's standing there. It's sitting there today. It's over 100 years old, or right at 100 years old. Just over 100 years old. And not only that, but those other buildings that he built was smokehouses, junk houses, and just storage buildings. And on the top of the hill there at that house was where his potato house was, where he stored the sweet potatoes and the Irish potatoes. And I never thought about it until I got to be some older and got to looking at the geography of the landscape of our estate there. Mm-hmm. Why would he put that potato house on top of that hill? And the reason being simple. If you're gonna store potatoes, they need to be in a dry place. And the top of that hill was a dry place. The water runs down here. It didn't make sense to build it down where the rest of those buildings was. And I shared that with my cousins and things. And not only that, but he had a dug pond down there that the livestock watered themselves. The cows, the hog, the horses, the goats, whatever we had at that particular time. And we had everything I just named, the chickens and what have you, and things like that, ducks. Turkeys, we had all of that, and that pond is still there today. I'm 73 years old, and I've never seen that pond go dry.
Wow.
Never, ever, never. Everybody else had ponds down there on Stick Road, but all of that punch filled in and everything is there. That's not even remnants of that, but that one is still much alive. And my brother Bobby kept it he would dig it out, had it dug out. And a matter of fact, he put catfish and other kind of fish in there also for him and his grandkids to fish with. That's the reason why I miss him, seeing him sitting out there with a pole or a rod and reel with his granddaughter sitting out there trying to fish. But this is what this old man did and what he tried to instill in us. Those words will forever be etched in my mind. Live within your means and establish yourself some independence. That means that you don't have to depend on anybody or anything.
That's right. And
for your livelihood.
The two things are so connected also, because if you live outside of your means, then you are bound by things other than yourself. You're not as independent.
You're not as independent, and you're just really not independent. You're working from payday to payday.
That's it.
And he subscribed to that theology for as long as I could remember. So that to me was something that I didn't learn at Prairie View A&M. Like I said, I majored in electrical engineering there, but. We raised everything that we ate. There's not a time that I can remember. I when I look at it now, I might have been 7 or 8 years old before I ever come to town, because we didn't have any reason to come to town. Everything that we ate, we raised. We had, like I said, we had the hogs, the cows, the chickens, the vegetables. I mean, anything, produce, anything that you can name, that if it was grown, we grew it. The canned goods, the fruits, the peaches, the apples, the pears, pecans, whatever you can think of, we had it. It was on that property.
All there.
Everything was there. Wow. We even grind our own. We took our corn and made our own cornmeal. So the only thing we would go to the store for, if they had to go, my grandfather would go up to ride his horse up to the store. He didn't believe that much in automobiles. He had a horse he was proud of. He's proud to put a saddle on that horse, and every Saturday morning he'd ride about 7.5 miles up to what is called Ad Biley's store, which is located at Highway 63 and 777. And he would ride up there, and he would come back, and he would meet and talk with other associates of his there, visit with them, and they'd talk about the crops and what have you, and he would come back with a 6-pack of RC Cola, a 6-pack of Pepsi Cola, a box of crackers, and what we call rat cheese today. And that was like taking a child to Walmart and buying a bunch of candy, cookies, and ice cream and stuff like that. To me,
it was something special.
It was something special.
Yeah.
And you didn't go and just drink that soda water, that soda pop at will. You had to wait until he opened some, and then you took your cup and told Grandpa to give you some out of that. You didn't just go and open his. So no, you didn't do that.
Yeah.
That was a no-no. But that's the type of old man that he was, and everybody in the community respected Albert McCrae in all walks of life, both black and white people. Some of his best friends that visited the house on a by and large, on a daily or as much as possible, was white guys. One guy in particular was named Marvin Smith. Marvin Smith was a hog. He had a hog farm, and he had hogs by the hundreds. But he valued Albert McCrae's opinion, even though, like I said, I gave you a litany of his education that he possessed. But he had a memory that was as sharp as an elephant. My grandmother would read the newspaper to him, and at that particular time, when we could get a newspaper, it was called a grit paper. You're probably too young to even know what.
I've never heard that term before. What does that mean?
That's just a newspaper. That was the name of the newspaper that came out. It's called GRIT. And he picked it up, or somebody gave it to him, or whatever. Grit. And my grandmother would then read the newspaper, and this is how we had outside correspondence, because the closest thing we had to anything else was the old radio was sitting there. And I think we might have got that when I was maybe 10 years old. And I thought, man, I just hung on that radio like I would a 60-inch high definition TV today. And you didn't play it excessively, because if you had time to play the radio, that means that you weren't doing what you were supposed to do on the farm.
Yeah, and with all the stuff you said that you guys had going on between the just to live.
Well, just let me give you a routine day from the time I was born up until the time I left, and I left when I was 18. I had 2 cows that I had to milk every day and every morning. And that was when I got in from school, or I played football, baseball, basketball, or ran track. No matter what time of the evening I got in, or night I got in, I had to milk those cows. And the same thing in the morning. I had to do that before I left or went to school. Everything was furnished by wood. The furnace, the stove, and everything was wood. So I had to make sure that there was enough wood. The wood box in the kitchen was full. I had to make sure that if it was in wintertime, there was enough heated wood on the front porch stacked all the way up to where it would keep the house warm both day and night. And no matter what time or how long football practice or basketball practice lasted, I have cut wood and busted blocks many a night by the light of the moon, because that's what I had to do.
And that everybody depended on you doing that.
Everybody depended on that. And if I didn't do it, well, I would get a thorough tongue lashing. In other words, my grandfather was a very strict disciplinarian. If you didn't, he didn't like to be around people that did not work. If you didn't work, that meant that you was going to do something else. And that's a philosophy that I look at today is still true. If you don't work, you're going to steal. And so
the old saying is true. Then idle hands.
That's right. Idle minds is the devil workshop. That's the way the word went. Mm-hmm. And he didn't socialize that much with that many people, but people have socialized with him because of his knowledge, his wisdom, his work ethics. This old man would work from the time he left the house in the morning, which is about 6:30, 7 o'clock after breakfast, and he would go and work to lunch. Come in and have lunch, and then he'd work till maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, depending on what he was doing. If it was tilling the soil, getting ready to plant, or getting ready to replant, or just tilling the ground to get it ready for planting, fixing fence, he had something to do every day except Sunday. Now, Sunday he would rest. He wasn't that much of a religious man, a church man. I understand that he was in his younger days, but he kind of fell out with the ways of the church was going when he was in middle age, 50, 60 something years old. Long story short, Alton McCray died in November 1970. And his legacy, like I said, the 9 children, and God, I don't have a number for the grandchildren and the great grandchildren that come forth from his loins. We number in the hundreds. Like I said, my father was a king, but I am more McCray than anything. I call myself a McCray of the McCrays because my mother was a McCray, and I was reared to maturity by the old man himself. So that makes my uncles and aunts almost my brothers and sisters, and my cousins and things almost my cousins and my nieces and nephews. And that's the way I kind of present myself. And they kind of look to me in that vernacular because I was reared to maturity by the old man. And I will say this, my cousins and nieces and nephews, they have a lot of respect for him because I was born in the house with him. Mm-hmm. As I left Jasper and graduated JEDCO High School, integrated school in 1964, May of 1964, and I went to Prairie View A&M that August. Tried to play a little football. Didn't have a scholarship, but they invited me to come down for a tryout for the fall session, and I did. I went down. And
is that something you got into when you were in grade school?
No, here? When I was in grade school, we went to Beech Grove Elementary School, right where the VFW Hall is now. Okay. And that's another story because my brother Bobby bought that entire facility there. Matter of fact, he owns that. His family owns that now. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, that's where we went from grades 1 through 8. And then from the 8th grade, we graduated and went to JEDCO High School over here up in Jasper here. Yeah.
This episode of Remember Tomorrow is brought to you by Paradigm Yoga in Jasper, Texas. What? Yoga in Jasper? Yeah. Paradigm Yoga is located in Jasper, Texas. The studio is at 211 North Bowie Street in Jasper, next to Brent Moe's State Farm. They've got a wide range of classes. Never done yoga before? Doesn't matter. They have a friendly community of yogis that will help you get started. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to be tough on you. Just a wonderful group of people that practice yoga together. You don't need to be flexible. All you need is an open mind and a willing heart. Check out their schedule on the internet at paradigmyoga.com. That's PARADIGM yoga.com, or on Facebook at the Paradigm Yoga page. Just search for that. You should be able to find it. Wide variety of classes to suit you. Yoga, sculpt, where you use a little resistance in the yoga flows. Chair-assisted yoga for those that may be a little less mobile, and everything in between. So check out the schedule online, read up on what each class is about, or if you got a question, give Shona a call at 409-698-6335, or just read more online at the website at paradigmyoga.com.
From 9 through 12. And as I stated, I went to try to play a little football, and I made the team, but all scholarships had been given out for that year, and the coach told me if I could pay my way to school that year and then take spring training, that I wouldn't have to worry about no scholarship next year. And at that time, when he made that statement, I think I had 35 cents in my pocket, so I had to come back home and then work, and then I went back. Mm-hmm. And when I went back, I didn't even attempt to try to play in the football. I just tried to concentrate on my major, which I failed at miserably, but at least I was there and I did the best I could. Anyway, I got drafted, and my classification changed in May of 1966 from a college deferment, which was a 2S, which was on my what my classification was, 2S college deferment. Mm-hmm. And in June it changed to a 1A. In July I got the letters and greetings. And so I was drafted, and I was supposed to be at the reception station in Houston in September of 1966. And I went to Houston and stepped in the induction center, and we took that one step forward, and we were inducted, me along with God knows how many, I think 70, 80 of us, because that was in the height of the Vietnam War, and anywhere between 40 and 60,000 young men were drafted at that particular time every month in 1966. Mm-hmm. And so I went from the induction station to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and that's where I took my basic training. And after the basic training, well, I took AIT at Fort Polk, and then I got, shipped to medical school from the AIT at Brooke Army Medical Center.
Were you given a choice?
No.
Of that? They told you you're going to medical school.
No. That's the way the orders came. As a matter of fact, when we took the AIT, everybody there, it was a supply clerk school.
And what is AIT?
Advanced Infantry Training. Mm-hmm. And so they call it formation after we'd graduated one, because the orders had came down there. And never will forget, there was 62 or 63 men in the company. And we called the formation one evening after we had finished eating dinner. And the captain was reading out the orders. He finally got our orders, and he said, these 19 men will be going to Ben Ho, Southeast Asia. These 19 men will be going to Da Nang, Southeast Asia. These 27 men will be going to Cambodia, Southeast. It was some parts of Vietnam. And he said, these are the fortunate SOBs in the company. He said they would be going to Brooke Army Medical Center at Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio. And he said, Jones, Ron Law, and then he said, King Willie. So it was 7 or 6 of us that went to Brooke Army Medical Center for medical.
With those guys at that time, had you gotten a relationship, gotten to know them, and became friends with them?
Got to know all of them.
Were you able to keep up with them on their tours when they went over to Vietnam? No. So you don't know what ended up happening to them?
I don't know what happened to any of them.
Oh, wow.
Because it was so much going on. See, because you left there, and you went to medical school, and you got involved with those guys there, and this thing lasted about 9 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we got our orders, and same thing. On a majority basis, 85% of these guys from the medical school went to some parts of Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. I went to Augsburg, Germany, the 30th Field Hospital in Germany, which was the second largest army installation hospital in Europe at that particular time, or should I say in Germany rather. The largest was in Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. Our job there, we had it was a 3-4-story building, the hospital that we worked in, had every phase of medicine known to man. It's a very large hospital. We had to go to, say, Frankfurt, or go to Rhine-Main Air Force, or go to some parts of Germany by helicopter to pick up soldiers that had been wounded in Vietnam for treatment, bring them to our hospital, because that was the closest that had the type of medicine or medication or facility to take care of that particular wound. Any kind of wound that you can name, war, you will see it in war with the people that have been in war. So I've seen stuff that people only dream about and can only see on TV and make believe, and it is never a pretty sight. I've had guys to actually die in my arm. I've those helicopters and trying to move them, transport them. It would be rated X if I described some of the things that I saw and some of the things we had to do.
Yeah.
But through it all, it just made me realize that, and the only word I can use to describe it is just how blessed I am to be able to sit here and talk about these things, especially after I've seen what I've seen and went through what I went through to get to where I am today. So I left. I didn't re-enlist in 1968. September the 28th, 30th, 1968. I left and come on back to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and was discharged at Fort Dix. Made my way to Jasper in October of 1968 and stayed around Jasper until January 1st, 1969. And then I decided I'd try my lot in Houston. So I didn't have a problem finding a job because I had being an Army medic. All you had to do was go to one of the hospital facilities in Houston and you automatically just about a shoe in. As a matter of fact, I put in my application at Baylor College of Medicine in the research department, and before I got back home, they'd already called me and told me to come to work. The only thing wrong with that was that Baylor is a land grant college, and by being a land grant college, well, Vietnam was taking up all the grant money at that particular time, so therefore the pay was minimal at best. Yeah. And the way I was raised, to live within my means and try to establish myself some independence, I couldn't do that with what I was making. So that statement was tantamount in my mind. So I stayed in Houston from January 1969, and now Jasper. Jasper was on my mind on January 1st of 1970, and I just woke up on a Sunday morning, and in less than 10 minutes, I had all my earthly goods in the back of a 1967 Chevrolet that I had bought. And I moved back to Jasper.
You knew that's where you wanted to be.
I had perceived that I had been as far as I wanted to go, and I've seen enough of a whole lot of things I didn't want to see anymore. So I decided I better come on home. And I was already engaged to a lady that I had met in Houston, so I kind of knew who my wife was going to be. So that wasn't a problem. We had already set a date of March of 1970. So I came back to Jasper and I got a little rent house over there in East Jasper, Texas, and I was living over there as a bachelor till I got married, and I went to work for a finance company here in Jasper. Can't think of the name. Security Finance. And my wife, my fiance, was at that particular time was a nurse's aide. So we got married March 21st.
Is that how you all met in the medical field?
No. I met her in a club one night, and we just started to corresponding and talking from there, and went out and got.
But you had a similar experience, her being in the medical field and you being.
Right, well, we didn't even talk about that at that particular time. Okay. It was just the fact that when I got to know her and find out who she was, I went to her house one night and I saw a picture up in a frame over there sitting on the table, and I said, I know that lady there. I said, that's Emily Barber. And she said her name was Sally Turner. And she said, that's my sister. I said, really? She goes, Emily Barber was first runner-up to Miss Prairie View when I was going to college.
Oh, wow.
And so I looked at her picture, and her husband was Tommy Nims. And he and I played football. I played football with him at Prairie View, so that brought us a little closer together.
Small world,
because of that kind of similarity. And so, the family was, nice middle-class family. And so country boy, kind of a nice family, a young lady that didn't seem to be too engaged in herself and the big ideas and things. I thought maybe she could make me a real good spouse. And she has. We've been married some 40. This past March was 49 years. March 21st was 49 years.
Wow.
And out of that marriage came 2 kids, 2 wonderful kids. My son is is about to be detective in the Houston Police Department, and my daughter Tracy is an analyst for ExxonMobil. And my son has two boys. One is 17, one 15. They are both great athletes at Summer Creek High School, football and baseball.
Yeah.
My granddaughter will be 13 May the 4th. She is a volleyball, dance, National Honor Society. So I'm a blessed man.
Yeah.
To have a family and children and grandchildren that are so prolific in this day and time.
This episode of Remember Tomorrow is brought to you by Vective Media, providing professional video and photo services to the Lakes area for you or your business. You can see their portfolio or the detailed list of their services at their website at vective.com. That's VEKTIVE.com.
But at any rate, I came on and then left the finance company. I think I worked there for as long as I could, put in an application to Tennessee Gas Pipeline. Started work there from April the 1st of 1971, and I left because of medical conditions in August of 2004. And then they finally retired me in 2007. So that was 36 years that they say I was at Tennessee Gas Pipeline.
Yeah.
And I was able to, like I said, educate both of my kids, send them same school I went to. That was Providence. Both of my children graduated Prairie View. My son was in electrical engineering, same major.
Same thing you did?
Yeah, and my daughter was majored in accounting. And so that's, like I said, the Providence. It's just Providence. I'm a blessed man because they just kind of followed in my footsteps, and I was just glad of it.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon, if you know history, to know that things don't just happen. They happen for a reason. And if I could, I'd like to start right where I was when I say I moved to Jasper and I moved back to Jasper. Well, there was a movement going on in Jasper.
What year? What year was that again?
I moved back to Jasper in January 1970.
Okay.
That was about 4 years after the schools were integrated.
Yeah, I was about to say, take me back to that time, not just locally, but America. Kind of set the stage. Give me an idea. Talk to me, because I wasn't but just describe it to me, because I wasn't even born then. So set the stage for me of how things were then.
Right.
Paint a picture for me of that.
It was an anxious time, if I might, for lack of a better term. Blacks were not used to going to school with whites. Whites were not used to going to blacks. But the kids seemed to be able to adjust more than the parents did. Mm-hmm. And I can speak, I'm speaking from Jasper, and I think universally all over the United States. Basically, you had pretty close to the same thing. It didn't matter what state it was in. You had some of it in all states. The people in Jasper were kind of anxious because, like I said, they and one thing I know, because they had not had a prom, and this was 1970, so the school started integrating really in 1968. I said 66, but it's 1968. Mm-hmm. It was when the first group of blacks went from Rowe High School to Jasper High School. And I don't remember or recall any of them saying that they had any kind of problem whatsoever with student body. I'm pretty sure there was some, mm-hmm. But whatever it was minimal. The thing that we were interested in, that the group of organizers and people that were upward mobility and forward thinking people they just wanted an opportunity for our kids and for this community to be the best that it could be. And in so doing, you had to put black people in positions to aid and to help other blacks and to show the community that we could compete and we could do things on a scale as good or just as good, better or just as good as anybody else.
Right.
And so what we campaigned for was to have a black heading a major sport. And that was one of the things that we did. And so that's how Coach Lord Weatherspoon got to be the track coach to hit a major sport. The next thing, one of the things that we tried to institute was there were no black majorettes. on the football field. Mm-hmm. You got black football players, but you don't have no majorettes. You don't have no cheerleaders.
Right.
So we did some agitation, and we were able to accomplish that. And one of the things that sticks out uttermost in my mind, as I alluded to you earlier, was the fact that they had not had a prom.
Why was that?
They did not have a prom because somebody just made a statement. It was just a wild statement that if you put those kids together, blacks and whites, in a setting like that, something could happen. Or something. No, the word was, and I quote, something might happen. Later on, he changed it to something could happen, but he said something might happen.
Yeah.
And I know the name, but I won't call it, because that's past.
Right.
That's all gone. I won't make you call the guy's name. But at any rate, I took it upon myself, with the blessings of the organization called Citizen for Progress, which is a black organization. My brother Bobby Hadnot was the president of that organization at that particular time. And I invited the city council student body from Newton High School, both black and white, all the members, to come over. I think it's about 12, 15 complement that came over to the school board meeting that night and talked to Jasper Independent School District Board of Directors about what they were encountering at events where there were both black and white.
Because in Newton, they had already they were continuing these events.
They never stopped doing anything.
They never stopped.
All they did, everything was inclusive. They already had what we were asking for here. Yeah. They already had that. They had black cheerleaders, black majorettes, all these kind of things. So it was already in Newton, and they didn't have a problem. It was just business as usual, day to day. Everybody got along.
Yeah. And
so brought it to the school board, and after much deliberation, I let these people speak and had the school board to ask these students questions, and first one thing like that, and then I excused, told them that, they were excused, and so I thanked them. And then it came down for a vote, and at that particular time, we had two blacks on the school board at that particular time, which was a rarity. We had Sherman Coleman, and his nephew was Ozzy Peacock. I believe Sherman made the motion, and Ozzy seconded, and it went. Everybody voted for it. All of these board of directors voted except one man, mm-hmm. and he voted nay. And as a matter of fact, he was so distraught about the idea that it happened, he resigned from the school board that night. And to me, that was the beginning of Jasper's monumental step toward equalization as far as the school board, as far as the Jasper Independent School District was concerned.
Yeah, and looking at, Newton is 20 miles away from Jasper,
right?
And they had integrated and progressed. Progress,
yes.
And Jasper, looking at that as a whole, just as a region or bigger, countrywide, mm-hmm. Or regionally, just in the South. How common were each of those things? How common was what was going on in Newton, or how common was what was going on in Jasper?
As I stated,
where did Jasper sit in progressing compared to just everything else, or was it just that time?
It was just that time.
Yeah,
it was just that time. After that night, everything appeared to move exponentially. Mm-hmm. There was no bickering that I knew of. There was no discord among the races, especially student body. My main concern was what student body thought about it. I knew that the parents, or some parents, would rail against it. I knew that, and that's the same thing with small town USA or large town USA. Mm-hmm. Student body could adjust.
Right.
Because students are just students. They just going to school.
That's right.
And they're just glad to be there and making new friends and stuff like that, and finding out that the myth they had been taught was a lie. And that's basically it.
So do you think it just took a group or a person with courage to stand up and say,
That's all I think that it took. Just one person to shine light into the corner of darkness that was held in someone else's mind for all these years and all this time. Mm-hmm. Someone has to shine light and bring the darkness to the light, so before they can see. And once that happened, as I stated, Jasper hadn't had that kind of problem since, as far as I know.
Right.
I'm not as abreast of the situation in the school district as I used to be, but that doesn't seem to be that kind of a problem. Now, to me, the people want to talk about racism. Well, you got to understand racism is an integral part of the fabric of the whole United States of America. This country was predicated on race. I mean, you bring a bunch of people over here to build this country from another country. Well, and you have them for all the 300 years as slaves and stuff like that. Well, yeah, that's just the way it is. Some of that will never leave some people. It will always be that way, and there's nothing. Only time will eradicate that. Yeah. But and as I stated to my brother here, and I used to talk about it. He used to ask me, "Well, King, what do you think it's going to take to eradicate it? It's going to take some dying." She goes, just like you just stated, you don't know anything about this. You were born in a different time. When you came along, we'll see how everything was already in place. Right. And all you did was just come into a place that already had everything that was there. The next generation would do the same thing. But if you teach a bad habit, that is it. And you keep teaching a bad habit, and it go in your family or my family from generation to generation, well, those bad habits are going to be permeated, but sooner or later somebody's going to shine light into that darkness, and it's going to fade away. I mean, that's the reason why you have the organization like Black Lives Matter. You still got neo-Nazis. You still got all these white supremacist things, because no one has actually shined light into this darkness that has permeated for hundreds of years. I see people all the time that I read about and I listen to on TV that I used to be in a white supremacist organization, and I know what this is about. And I've seen guys come up and say, and be sincere about it. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing blinding tears come from their eyes because of the things that they used to do.
That's right.
But somebody had to shine a light in there for them to be able to come forth and say that. Now, if you could do that on a large scale, just imagine what this country would be like if you could just shine that light and just eradicate that if you could do it for, say, a week, and let people see how it would be for a week, that the thoughts that they had thought were not as egregious as they really are. As a matter of fact, they're just myth.
Yeah.
And not only about whites against black, but blacks against whites, blacks against Mexican, Mexicans against white against whatever it is. A lot of people are not of the impression that God created only one race, and that was the human race. A lot of people are not of that impression. And that's what puzzles me, and that's what perplexes my mind, is that 11 o'clock, as Dr. King stated, is still the most segregated time that there is in America. Still. And he made that statement in 1963. Even though our churches are integrated now, and you can go to church anywhere you want to. I can go to First Baptist. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I sang in a choir at First Baptist. But at 11 o'clock, it's still integrated. I still go to Greater New Bethel Baptist Church. I could go to First Baptist if I wanted to, or First Methodist. But it's the religious people that bothers me. And I'm reminded of an excerpt from the Birmingham jail letter that Dr. King wrote. He said, "I'm not concerned about the people of ill will." He said, "I'm more directly concerned about the people of goodwill, because when the people of goodwill sit by and let these things happen without saying anything, I expect it of the people of ill will, but not the people of goodwill to sit there and let these things go. When our so-called evangelicals and Christians go along with all of this racist or ungodly acts and things that are said and done, therein lies the problem." Mm-hmm. And that's a problem for America. America has to solve that problem. And if religion has anything to do with it, I don't think it will ever. It's a difference between religion and Christianity. I'm pretty sure that's everything. Let's put it this way: one of the bloodiest and most awesome wars that ever been waged against mankind was the war of the Catholic Church back in those days and stuff like that. You know, that's just the way it is. But even that was in medieval ages. But by the same token, the thought process still permeates with good versus evil or whatever it is. I don't actually see it that way. 73 years have shown me, because like I said, when I can go to a helicopter and take a body out of that helicopter that needs attending to, I'm not looking at the color of that man's skin. I'm looking at what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. That's the way it should be done with everything that we do. For instance, here in Jasper right now, I serve on the Jasper Economic Development Board. And one of the best things that has happened to Jasper in a long time is the inclusion of the Provalis company coming to Jasper to bring jobs to mm-hmm. Jasper. Mm-hmm. That's not a black thing. That's not a white thing. That's an economic thing. Mm-hmm. That's great for Jasper, Newton, Kirbyville, all the surrounding areas in here. So when your economics pick up, when people are able to go to Walmart, they're able to go to Brookshire Brothers, they're able to go to the gas stations, they're able to go to the automobile dealerships, they're able to go to a restaurant and do what people do at all these locations which I just named, and they can pay for it with their own money, there is less agitation, there's less hatred.
They feel a little more independent.
They feel a little bit more independent, mm-hmm. and things are great. Somebody asking, well, how things going? Oh, it's going good, because they're able to do the things that they want to do by their own means.
Less stress in their families and their households.
And it's the same thing with any. It don't make no difference what nationality it is. So why would I not want that for you mm-hmm. and just want it for myself? Now therein lies the problem. Is when I want it for me, but I don't want it for you. In other words, I want to be able to do all these things, but I don't want you to be able to do it. Now some people still have that mindset, and I can, me and you neither one can do anything about. But they are in a minority. But when you bring the Provalises in, and then you bring another organization, see, Provalis to me is going to be a domino effect for what is going to take place here in Jasper. We are now right here on Houston Street, knocking down those buildings such that there can be a parking lot for these 60-something employees that are going to be in this old peddler building that mm-hmm. the Jasper Economic Development Corporation, along with the city, is going to renovate. Now, if you got 60-something employees, then people got to have somewhere to eat.
That's right.
So can't you just imagine a Papados or a Chili's or an IHOP or something in downtown? That revitalizes downtown Jasper. That means that somebody's going to have to go to work in these restaurants and these other things that are going to be built and stuff like that. And as the employees provide include this other facility that they're going to and bring more people in and stuff, you're going to need more of this and you're going to need more of that.
It's definitely going to have a big impact on our economy.
It's going to have a big impact on the economy. So this is what this is about. And when in any city or any town, whereas the people can feel independent about when they go out or go do whatever, you find that there is very little to no crime. Very little to no crime. Mm-hmm. Statistics have borne that out. And so the same thing for Jasper. And so when we start, if we start talking about the bird horrific incident, I don't like to use that as a measuring stick for Jasper. You can't use that as a measuring stick.
I don't either, because what I've seen, I was a police officer here in this town for almost 10 years, mm-hmm. and I saw a lot of things happen through the hurricanes that hit. I saw a lot of things, community-wide events happen here. And one thing I was always proud of was the way this community came together. Right. Despite skin color and things, people would come together and help each other and love each other. Right. And it always made me proud. And I always said, I want everybody that's heard the bad things about this area, I want them to see these people now, what they're doing together. And I've seen, like I said, with storms that would come through or different mm-hmm. things, someone in the community lost their home to a fire. Just the people that would come together and help these different families and help each other.
And Jasper has always done mm-hmm. that. Mm-hmm. Jasper has always done it. I would like to use this analogy on that. And I talk to people a lot because I fish a lot and I fish in other states. And one of the first things somebody want to ask me about is about the Jasper incident with the bird situation. I said that was an isolated incident, and
that could have happened anywhere.
Wait a minute, it does. And as a matter of fact, it happens all the time. I said, that guy that killed those 20-something people in Las Vegas that day, I said, while he was shooting, planes were still landing. I said, slot machines were steady being pulled. I said, traffic people were steady driving in. I said, that didn't stop nobody from coming to Las Vegas. People are still coming. They're still spending their money. When that young man went in that church up there in North Carolina, South Carolina, where it was, and killed all those people in that church, I said, that was an act of evil. I said, you're going to have that. I said, I don't know what it was that prompted him to do that. I said, but they still have in church, and that was an isolated incident. It didn't happen the next day or the next day. And it might not happen. It might not ever happen again. And anywhere things like atrocities like these happen, it is just an isolated incident, and it's a single case. You can't compare one and then say, well, I can't go to Jasper because this happened. No. I talking to a guy from Little Rock, Arkansas this morning, and he mentioned the fact that where we were this past weekend, just to show what I mean. We had a bass tournament in Clinton, Arkansas. There are no blacks that live in Clinton, Arkansas, but the city of Clinton, Arkansas, were so into or so inspired by what our bass club. You had black bass club members from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, and Texas. In other words, we had some 65 plus boats there. And so what Clinton, Arkansas wanted to do, they wanted to show the world that we can promote love and peace and harmony with these brothers from all over these other states. And we want them to come to our city, and we're going to give them X number of dollars to bring their boats and come up here and use our facility and fish in our lake for as long as they want to up here. And so what they did, these people rolled out the carpet. They had us to go to the city park. That's where we had the weigh-in. The restaurants were open. Whatever we needed, and I never saw another black outside those of us that were fishing. But what they're trying to do, they're trying to let the world know that no, whatever you say Clinton is, we don't want that stigmatism to keep you from coming here and doing things. Jasper is also a retirement a haven. You got Sam Rayburn Lake, and people love Sam Rayburn. Talk about Sam Rayburn all over the world. Is a kind of like when you come here and the first thing somebody want to say, well, the bird. And that kind of makes me feel kind of bad when I hear, but I can always address it, and I always address it to the positive. Not only that, but good gracious alive, some of the people that were living then had been dead. So that's one way of cleansing this thing out. So no, I don't want that to ever jump up and be a part of why Jasper is and what it should be. Jasper can be as great as it wants to be, and I think we have the right leadership in place. The Economic Development Corporation has the right figureheads and people who are diligently working, not only for a certain section of Jasper, but all of Jasper. The board members that are there, I find that they don't have any reservation. If it's good for Jasper, it's good for them. If it's good for us, then it has to be good for Jasper, because it's not about us. It's more about what's good for Jasper. And I'm proud to serve on that board, because that's what it's about. If I can leave any kind of legacy when I'm gone from here, I would like for somebody that knew me to try to say, well, that man tried to help somebody. And to me, that's what life is all about. It's not about me. It's not about my being this or my being that. It's just that I tried to help somebody.
Yeah. Well, that board, I've seen it over the last 5 or 6 years, just exponentially take off with some of the work they've been doing in the community and different programs and helping out with economic development in the area. And it's just going to take people that are willing to listen, and people that are willing to look forward, and like you said, just help. Be willing to help everyone. And it's happening. I think it's happening. And
if I could, I don't mind throwing out a few names and things. We got Eddie Hopkins as our executive director down there, and our Paul Smith is his assistant, and they work good hand in hand. And we got Danny Walker, who's the president of the board. And to me, these are exciting times because of their leadership. And I think that we got some things that are on the back burner. We're going to bring. Jasper's going to really, within the next next 5 to 10 years, I say Jasper will almost. I want to go out on a limb and say this: we'll almost be 5A because of what we have brought into Jasper from an economic standpoint. These people come moving in here for jobs and stuff like that. I feel real good about that.
That's the big thing. Just having having jobs, having an industry.
Right.
Man, without that, what that?
Yeah. What is it?
What is it? Yeah.
Yeah. See, because we lost a long time. Jasper's when I was a kid growing up, Jasper was a. I've kind of finished my interview, but I'll go back here with this. When I was a kid, Jasper was a wood producing town and city. And what we had Elam Wood Mill in East Jasper. We had a Kirk Lumber Company down there where behind where the old Jasper Theater was. We had Visitor Company over there. And then we had Louisiana Pacific over there. So we had all kind of black entrepreneurs at that particular time, and everything was just booming. And so now,
because of the lumber
business, yes, you had people, and the thing about it, I look at it from a black entrepreneur standpoint. See, right now we don't have any black entrepreneurs in Jasper. We have maybe one or two. I think got Billy's barbecue place up there, and got Land Barbershop over there, and got Sales Barbershop up on North Wheeler Street. That's about it. And when I was a kid, we had that. Our kids don't have anywhere harder to go. Like I said, but all of these things will change. They're going to change. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, and I feel very good about it just because of what the city and Jasper Economic Development Corporation is doing. That leadership circle there. And all it needs is just to put a few more pieces of that puzzle together, man, and Jasper's just going to manage. It's going to take off. I feel real good about that.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm proud to operate a business in this area. I'm proud of my wife. She came here from England.
Right.
And I look at her as kind of like almost the American dream in a way.
Yeah.
Because she came here from England, and she kept her job from England, and she was able to work over the internet for the company that she worked for a while here. And then the company made changes and changed their direction. And so, as they say in England, she was made redundant and lost her job. And she said, well, I think I want to start a yoga studio. And we'll go start a yoga studio.
There
so she got, and then she's just doing great now. And I'm proud of her. But I feel like if we instill that mindset with others in the community, hey, you can go out and start a business. What would you like to wake up every day and do? You don't have to go and work for someone else. You know, what's your niche in the community? What service can you offer that you want to offer?
Right.
Go out there and chase it. Ask someone. Learn about what you're interested in and figure out how to make money doing that.
Right.
And the more that the economy grows here in certain areas, it's going to allow people to cultivate those dreams and start their own businesses.
Right.
I believe.
That's one more thing I want to say. It would be very informal of me if I didn't do that. I didn't include my wife in this thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, we got married on March 21st, 1970. And I moved her from Houston to East Jasper, Texas. As a matter of fact, on Stewart Street, and we've been there ever since. Not in that, just moved right down the street. I bought a house. I moved there in 1970. I bought a house down the street in 1971. But she was a nurse's aide in Houston, and she worked at, I believe it was Herman Hospital. But she came to Jasper, and during that particular time, she was at the right place at the right time, and Jasper Memorial Hospital was offering LVN school, so she went to LVN school, and she was surprised herself. She graduated the LVN school at the Jasper Memorial. Thank Ms. Ponder and Ms. Weber, who were the instructors of the pioneers of that particular school, and these ladies need some recognition. And I want to give a shout out to them. They're elderly women now, but I really appreciate not only what they did for my wife, but what they did for the women of Jasper.
Right.
And then my wife was even more inspired. She went on and got her RN degree from the University of New York. And man, that woman ate, slept, and drank that hospital. That was her passion. Matter of fact, so much of a passion until it got to her health, and I retired in 2004 and decided that I was going to fish professionally, and then she had an aneurysm on March 28th of 2010, had her first aneurysm. And then we went to the stroke center in Lufkin, intensive care over there for a long time, rehabbed at Memorial Hospital, and she got out, come home, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. Anyway, long story short, May the 31st of 2010, she had another aneurysm.
My goodness.
And so we spent the time there at Memorial Hermann, about 3 weeks down there, and brought her back home. And then all in the meantime, she had about 4 or 5 mini strokes and then one major stroke. Mm-hmm. So when I look at that woman, I see a major miracle, because everybody I know that done had an aneurysm of what she's had, just like the boy Singleton that directed The Boys in the Hood. He's 51 years old and had a stroke. 10 days he did. Yeah. She had 2 aneurysms, and she's still walking and talking. She does good. And she got some orders for me when I leave here. So, what can I say? Still keeping you in line. That's right. I'm still blessed, no matter how you look at it, Paul. I'm too blessed to be distressed, and it would be very, I would say, stupid of me to even try to cry about anything. Yeah. Well, I feel like us as a community are very blessed to have you in this community and people like you, because that's the type of stuff that makes Jasper area great. You're a very inspiring person, and I'm glad I got to sit down and visit with you today. I'm glad to have done it, and I'll have a whole lot of stuff out, but we'll get it on the next time, okay? We'll do that. We'll do that. All right. Well, I appreciate you so much, Mr. Willie. And thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for joining me today. All right.